I don't know where to put these, just there's like no space. Hi, hello. There is nothing quite like getting excited about books coming out, and honestly, working in publishing has given me so much insight into what's coming out, when, how everything works. Amongst that is also the privilege of receiving proofs that allows me to read books before they come out, although that is not always the case. Embarrassingly enough, it doesn't always happen the way I hope it will, which is of course to read them months in advance when I get them. Of course, I'm always happy to get these proofs because one, it also saves me the time and effort to go out and buy them, but in addition, it allows me to read them beforehand when and if I can. So today I want to pop in and talk about my anticipated releases from April through to June. I'm really excited to talk about these. I do these every 3 months or so, kind of as we lead up to the months I'm going to be talking about. This month is a little bit late, but I've forgiven myself for it already being late. But I think without further ado, I think we should jump straight on in. We're going to talk about all the books coming out in April that I just cannot wait to read. Whether or not I read them within the next 6 months or, you know, in the next 3 month span or within the year, knows? I have no idea. I do, and I will try to prioritize these proofs. In fact, I do have a couple that I've read throughout the year so far, and I'm hoping to maybe shift my focus a bit more to these proofs over the next coming months, just so that I get on ahead with them. I do find it quite difficult to balance new releases and backlist books, which are like older titles that I already have on my shelves. I think everyone can relate to that. The amount of new books coming out every year and the amount of existing books is just insane, and obviously I want to read everything as soon as I possibly can, and it's just a very difficult time unless you're sitting at home and reading all day. I do struggle to find that balance, but I think without further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight on into my April proofs. So these are the proofs that I physically have in my hands. These are not counting the electronic or the e-arcs that I have, just because there's so many. But I think let's go ahead and jump in with April. The first book I have is What Happens on Vacation by Jo Watson. This is coming out in April here in South Africa. Jo is also a South African author. I do have an unboxing for this. She has included in that unboxing a letter to the reader, which is really exciting. This proof isn't signed, which I wish it was, but it's okay. I won't mind it not being signed. But in this one, we have two rivals who go on holiday, and it will be a trip they never forget. I'm not too sure other than that, but I did love Jo Watson's Love to Hate You, so I'm really excited for this one, especially since I'm working a little bit closer with this campaign, but I'm really excited for this one nonetheless. I don't know where to put these, just there's like no space. The next one I have is Fireborn, Phoenix and the Fast Palace. This is the second one to 12 and the something. I'm so terrible with names, as you can probably tell. So 12 and the Phoenix, I don't know too much, but I really am excited to jump into this more middle grade series. Hopefully within the next month or two. I do have book 1 on my shelves. I actually hold it in my March haul, which is linked up in the info cards. This one is really excited. I'm really excited. Hope grows from the ashes is the saying for this, and this cover I'm just in love with. The next book I have here is Let's Play Murder by Kezia Lupo. This is also coming out in April, and this one has like a really fun and exciting premise. So there's a whole bunch of kids playing a game, and the trick or the thriller aspect of this is that when these kids die in the game, they actually end up dying in real life. So now it's up to the people who are playing the game to figure out what is happening and how it's all happening, and it just sounds so interesting. This kind of reminds me a little bit of a combination of Ready Player One, Warcross. There was another one as well. There was like a horror movie not too long ago where people played a game and they got put into the game and they either won money or they lost and died. I can't remember that one too well, but that movie was really great. So this is what this reminds me of. It's obviously more directed towards teenagers, and it says, welcome to the game, a secret virtual reality unlike any other. I'm really excited for this one. I'm hoping I can jump into it sooner than later. And at the back it says, win or die trying. Moving on to my more adult stuff, not that What Happens on Vacation was an adult, but I have Looking Glass Sound by Catriona Ward. I have yet to read her actually, or read from her, but this one is incredible. This seems like it's going to be a thriller mixed with some magic realism aspects. I'm not 100% sure. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just going to read you the synopsis because this one sounded really great. Writers are monsters. We eat everything we see. In a windswept cottage overlooking the sea, Wilder Harlow begins the last book he will ever write. It is a story of his childhood companions and the killer that stalked their small New England town, of the body they found, the horror of that discovery echoing down the decades. And Sky, Wilder's one-time friend who stole his unfinished memoir and turned it into a lurid best-selling novel, The Sound and the Dagger. This book will be Wilder's revenge on Sky, a man who betrayed his trust and died without ever telling him why. But as he writes, Wilder begins to find notes written in Sky's signature green ink. Events in his manuscript start to chime eerily with the present. Is Sky haunting him? Did Wilder have more to do with Sky's death than he admits? And who is the woman drowning in the cove whom no one else can see? No longer able to trust his own eyes, Wilder begins to wonder, is he writing the book? Or is the book writing him? How good does that sound? I'm definitely going to be jumping into this one sooner rather than later, just because of that premise alone. I'm really excited for this one, and from what I've heard, Catriona Ward is a phenomenal horror thriller writer who is new on the scene. This is only her third book, and her most famous one is The House on Needless Street, which I'm obviously also excited to pick up at some point. We then have The Hike by Lucy Clarke, which I am also excited to read. Another thriller, and Lucy Clarke is one of those thriller writers that I'm really getting excited to read from. She releases basically one a year at this point, and this one takes place in the Norwegian woods. With a set of French, she always writes these really fantastic friendship dynamics that I love to bits. So I'm really excited to pick this one up. I'm actually hoping to pick it up sooner rather than later. Obviously, I'm going to say it for all of them because they just all sound exciting, but essentially these friends always plan a little holiday trip, usually where they can do stuff together, and this time around someone chooses to go on a hike in the Norwegian woods. However, as they're walking and they're hiking through the woods, they get the feeling that they're getting followed by someone. And I'm going to leave it there because I feel like that's very eerie, and you know, a holiday of a lifetime, a killer on the trail. It just sounds so great and I cannot wait to read it. The next book is the last physical proof that I have, and one that I'm still kind of a little bit mad that I haven't read yet, and that is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Rebecca Ross has made waves in the fantasy genre over the last couple of years, especially with her, I don't want to get a mistake, but like her River Enchanted, I think it is? Yes, A River Enchanted and A Fire Endless. That has been her recent duology. This one sounds really, really great. A little bit different. This one also contains magic and gods and two rival journalists, and nothing can stop them from communicating, and it just sounds incredible, and I really can't wait. This is in fact what the UK cover will look like, and so I'm very much excited to pick this one up. This is from the new Harper Voyager imprint, Magpie, so I definitely need to jump into this sooner rather than later. Now moving on to the books that I do not have a e-copy, or not that I know of, or a physical copy of. The first one I have is A Bone Shard War by Andrea Stewart. I do need to catch up on the series. I've only read the first book and I do have the second one on my shelf over here somewhere, and I'm really interested in picking these up, although I did see Fairy Loot's announcement of the entire series, so you can totally hear my budget going, don't do it, don't spend that money, but I am totally interested in doing that regardless. But I definitely will be grabbing a copy of this book as soon as I possibly can. I am so very excited for it. I really love the first book. I am yet to reread it since my initial read, but I am just really excited. I think this is the right kind of book. I have heard that people say they're kind of disappointed by the second book, but I'm hoping with the third book coming out so soon I can just power through all three and make a conclusive decision, because I really enjoyed the first book. The premise is just so exciting, and if you haven't picked it up yet, I do encourage you to do so, even if you just pick up the first one. I really enjoyed it. Then I have In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. I have yet to read a TJ Klune. I know it's quite embarrassing, some would say, but I'm very much excited nonetheless to pick up one of his books, because he just sounds like one of those writers that will become a staple where you need like a cozy hug. I do have like 3 of his books on my shelves, probably all of his releases minus his young adult books, and I'm really hoping to pick this one up. Don't know when, don't know how, but I will be picking it up at some point. We are then moving on to Happy Place by Emily Henry. At the moment I'm kind of juggling between whether or not to get the Illumicrate exclusive edition. Also Barney says hi, he's also very interested in Happy Place. I loved it. I read a proof of this. You'll be seeing a video coming out pretty soon about me reading this and getting into it if you haven't, but in my opinion thus far it is her best book that she has written. Then moving on to Untethered's Guide by Fonda Lee. I don't know too much about this, but this one sounds really exciting. It's a standalone conclusive fantasy novel, or more like a novella, just about these endangered magical birds are like massive, and yeah, and a girl or a woman, a young woman who kind of has a very special connection with them, which I am of course very excited to read. We then have Ascension by Nicholas Binge. I don't know too much about this at this point, but I do remember reading the synopsis going, this sounds really interesting. This is more on the sci-fi spectrum if I'm not mistaken, so I'm excited to pick this up. I do not know when, but we will get through it. Okay, I do have a physical copy of the following book, and I have in fact read it. Once again, you'll see a video quite soon about this, and that is Silver in the Bone by Alexandra Bracken. I do have a copy, but it's kind of like stacked underneath others, and I don't feel like taking it out. But this is an Arthurian legend retelling, which I also enjoyed, just as like a little spoiler. But I'm really excited for this to be released and for everyone to pick it up. In fact, I think it's already released in the US, but in South Africa we're only going to be getting it in May. I do think it's also part of a Fairy Loot subscription for April, so just a heads up for that, as well as for our crate. We then have Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I want to say this was another romance. I really enjoyed, I think it's the Playlist book by her. I really enjoyed her romance, her character connections, the relationship. I just really liked how she dealt with everything, so I can't wait to pick this one up. And the very last one, which I think is also out in the world right now, is Trace of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I'm a massive Brandon Sanderson fan, even though I've only ever read one book by him, and I will continue to emphasize that point because it took one book that I've only ever read once for me to get really enamored with him. I'm really excited for this one, and I'm hoping to continue on with the Cosmere world. I just need to see where Trace of the Emerald Sea kind of fits in, but I'm hoping to do a reread and a read of the entire Cosmere universe, starting with Elantris, which I still need to get a copy of. I did have one for a while, but I've passed it on, and I really want to get another copy of this on hand, just so I can start getting into the Cosmere world. His books are quite thick, but I love his writing, I just love his magic, and he just has these very complex worlds that totally amaze me. And the fact he amazes me in himself because he wrote like 4 novels in the span of a year above his usual contracted work, which I thought was quite incredible. We're now going to move on to May. I'm going to pop through everything that I have received physically for May, and then we'll just talk through them much like we did with April. Starting with my younger books, I have Cosmina, The Unfortunate Steals a Star. This follows our main character Cosmina, who has been given up to go into this orphanage, but this is no ordinary orphanage. In fact, most orphanages in this world are essentially where individuals that people find as undesirable tend to go. However, the people in Cosmina's orphanage all have a special skill, and with these skills they're able to steal things. And we have a world famous philanthropist who ends up buying this orphanage to support it and care for the kids, but it turns out there are more sinister intentions behind that, and he actually wants to use the kids who have these special skills to steal a star. And that just sounds really incredible. I'm really excited to read about Cosmina's entire world, and this is by Laura Noakes and is illustrated by Flavia Sorrentino. There are no illustrations at this very moment within this actual book, well, the proof that I have, but I'm really excited to pick this one up. I do want to go into more middle grade this year. I miss reading middle grade. It is such an easy world to get a part of, and I'm really excited to pick it up. The very next one is this really gorgeous proof which has a lot of foiling on it, and I'm really excited. This is The Kingdom Over the Sea by Zora Navi, and this is kind of the 1001 Arabian Nights retelling, but more for middle grade kids, so definitely nothing too dark or sinister. And apparently this is just a really well crafted book, a well crafted story. The writing is incredible. There's going to be a map in here, and that's what the cover is going to look like. Now just imagine that with foiling, and it's just going to be really incredible. I am excited to pick this one up. It's also not too long in my opinion. I think I could definitely power through this over the course of a day. But another one that sounds just so incredible, and as I said, I want to get more into middle grade again this year because it was one of my favorite little age categories to read, and like the subgenres in middle grade are just incredible, and the kind of stories that come out of these books is just amazing. So I do want to pick this up, and this, as I said, this cover alone is just incredible. Moving into a more young adult book, I have Imogen, obviously, by Becky Albertalli. If you don't know, I also hold this in my March haul, and this kind of follows Imogen, who doesn't really know if she's straight or not, and this book is in response to Becky Albertalli being called out for not being queer and writing a lot of queer stories. And basically this is her response to that, about, you know, you might not always know where you fall in the community. Sometimes you are just the heteronormative straight person, or other times, you know, it just takes a little bit of experimenting to really get into it. And I don't know, this book just sounds like it's going to be a really important conversation, so I'm really interested in picking this one up sooner rather than later. Then moving on to my more adult stuff, I have The Best Men by Sydney Kroger. Is that how I say it? Sydney Kroger. And this is so hilarious. So we have these two men who end up having a one-night stand, and then soon discover who each other is and end up hating each other, and then find out that they are both in the same wedding as the best men of either side of the, you know, wedding, and they wish to prove that they are both the best men for the job of being the best man. And this just sounds like it's going to be an amazing time, and I can't wait to pick it up. This just sounds so funny. It has a shout out for Amy Schumer, which is exciting, and Sydney Kroger is actually a screenwriter, so I definitely think there's going to be some movie moments in here for sure. Moving on swiftly to Fine Shade, which is a book that I just cannot wait to read, and I'm still mad at myself for not having picked it up sooner. This cover is just really stunning. Fine Shade is a dark academia-esque novel that I'm definitely dying to pick up. I have a video in mind for this, so you'll probably end up seeing it quite soon, and I just can't wait to pick this up. I have high expectations, but not too high, because I do think this is a debut writer. I'm not entirely sure, I could totally be mistaken, but this is one that I just cannot wait to read. It is gleefully subverting all the tropes of traditional gothic. The talented Mr. Ripley meets Jane Eyre in the twisted tale of ultimate anti-heroine, which just sounds really great, so I can't wait to pick this up and just devour it really. Then of course, like pretty much everyone in this industry, I am dying to pick up Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, or Rebecca Kuang as she is now going to be known as, and or like as she'll be known in her more fiction-like books, and she'll remain R.F. Kuang in fantasy. But this just sounds really fun. This is like one hell of a story that just isn't hers to tell. If you don't know, this follows a character who has a best friend who is a best-selling author, and our main character isn't. She just hasn't found the same kind of success, and then on the night that her friend dies, she is there and she finds the manuscript that her friend was working on and then passes it on as if it was hers. And we are going to have a very unlikable character in this, and I'm really excited to pick this up. I've just heard amazing things, and it's definitely high on my list. I then have The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. This is definitely a hefty, floppy book that I'm also keen to pick up. This is over 500 pages, and I've read the first chapter or so, and I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a lot of fun. Very fun reading, and I kind of want to get to the point where they talk about the book that wouldn't burn. But this cover is also just truly stunning, and this artwork will be on the final jacket, and I want to pick it up. I don't know too much about this one really. It's just another fantasy book that is on my list of fantasies that need to get read this year, and I'm really excited for this one. Then moving into the very last book that I have physically on my May anticipated reads, I have The Ghost Theatre by Matt Osman. Matt Osman is Richard Osman's brother, which is so exciting. This is one from Bloomsbury, and this is definitely going to be on their big list, big titles for the year. And this one follows also some magical elements. We have a theatre, a lot of magicalness in this book, so I'm really excited. It isn't too long, and I think it's a fan of the theatre. This is going to be a fantastic read. The next book that I don't have, obviously, is The Battle Drum by Sarah Al-Arafi, or Arifi. I originally read The Final Battle. Is it The Final Battle? I'll put the cover over here. I'm so sorry, I've completely forgotten the name, but I do think it's The Final Battle by the same author. This is going to be a trilogy. This is the second book in the trilogy, and the cover for this is once again just amazing. I am hoping to continue on with the series and maybe reread the first, because it has been a bit of a while, and I did struggle through the first book just because it was quite lengthy, but I'm hoping to reread it and then jump into the second one as soon as possible. Moving on, we have Witch King by Martha Wells, which I'm so excited for. This is another fantasy book that I just cannot wait to read, and this has been announced to be the May pick for the Illumicrate book box, which I'm really excited for, and I cannot wait to read. Moving on swiftly, we're going to move into June. As you can see, my releases kind of trickle off a little bit of my anticipated releases. Obviously, there's always going to be drop-ins and stuff. I'll mention those maybe in other videos when I do pick those up. But for now, let's jump into the physical books that I have for June. The first book I have here is Central Park West by James Comey. This is a more commercial book from Head of Zeus, which follows, I think James Comey is in fact or was an ex-something, ex-FBI, ex-something. I'm not 100% sure, but this just sounds like a really fun thriller that I'm hoping to pick up. Then of course have The Queen of Romance coming back with Love Theoretically, Ali Hazelwood. I'm hoping to do a separate video for this that you'll hopefully see somewhat soon. I'm hoping. I don't know. I'm just gambling here, but I'm really excited to pick this one up. I have already read Unfortunately Yours by Tessa Bailey. If you want to see that video, it will be linked in the info cards. But this is a fantastic romance book which follows Natalie and is the second book to Secretly Yours that has just come out quite recently. This one has a marriage of convenience, enemies to lovers, the guy falls first. I mean, come on guys, those are the tropes that we love on Book Talk, and this book is definitely a lot better than the first one. So if you aren't sure about the first book, read it. Pick up this one on its own. You don't necessarily need to read the first book to read this. In my opinion, they tend to read like standalones, but it's great when you read them together. Secretly Yours in terms of events, is the first, and this is definitely the second, but I really enjoyed this one and I highly recommend it and I loved it and I can't wait for everyone to read this in June. Then I have The Illusions by Liz Hyde. This one just sounds really cool. This is inspired by real life illusionists and early film pioneers and a astonishing story of women, talent, magic and power from award-winning author of The Gift. I mean, that really sold me. This is going to be an amazing edition with foiling on the cover, and you know, we have the magician, the trickster, the liar, and the thief, whose perspectives we will all read from, and I'm really excited for this one. Moving into the books that I don't personally have a physical copy of, these are just like, I don't have so many as I said. I have Bonesmith by Nikki Powell Petro. I don't know too much about this one, but I think this is also another fantasy that I just can't wait to get my hands on. I love any kind of magic, and I see that coming up quite often, more now since the Bone Shard Daughter was released on bone magic that is done with bones. It sounds a little creepy, maybe a little bit morbid, but I don't know, the things that people come up with is just incredible. And the last one I have on my list is The Surviving Sky by Kritika H. Rao. This one just sounded so cool. I've seen some proofs going out and this just sounds like one of those books that is a mix of everything, but I'm hoping it does a little bit of everything quite well. And those are all the books that are on my anticipated releases for April through to June. If you have any that aren't on this list and that you think I should read based on my taste, let me know down below in the comments. And I am so excited just because I feel like this year the books that I have read from being released this year have just been really incredible reads. I definitely need to pick up my game when it comes to reading my proofs because there are so many that I haven't read yet, but I just feel like it's one of those things where the balancing act is just not doing so well. I might have to shift my plan and do half proofs and half back releases, but that's always so difficult because you don't know how many books you're gonna read in a month. Like, I can say I want to read 20, but it doesn't mean I'm gonna read 20. I don't know, it's hectic, but I will catch you in the next one and I hope to see you there.